Hello and welcome to the 16th episode of my Devblog from Wisp, where I talk about the progress from Wisp, and I'm also talking about one game design topic I'm picking. And today it will be non-narrative game progression, which I will go later into. Anyway, so first off, what's up with Wisp? So from last week I found out a couple of bugs actually. One bug in particular, or a couple of bugs in the input manager actually, that caused me quite some headache. One of them was if you have multiple axes with the same name. Let's say you do like this, a double mouse X element, and you configure them differently. Let's say here we have a 4.6 sensitivity, and here you have a 0.1 sensitivity. Then the sensitivity is picked at random, like the differences basically are picked at random, or at least I couldn't make out any difference. Like that doesn't mean it's actual true random, but I couldn't pick out any difference, so for me it was random. Like I had one PC where it took one of the settings and another one that took the other settings, which caused me quite some headache. The next thing that happened is also related to this. Because of this bug, I actually had a bug with the sensitivity here. If you look at the, let's see, where is it, the horizontal axis and the vertical axis, there's actually a dead area, which means basically if you look at this gamepad here, if you pull the stick to the right, if you don't pull it completely to the right, like just a little bit, the dead zone is telling you how much you can go to the right or to the left. So basically how much the value this stick is returning can vary from 0 before it counts as actually putting it into a direction. This caused, I think, or I know this caused a bug that some people had where the guy is always moving to the left or to the right or wherever. And I actually heard that other games had this problem as well, and that's because of the dead area is not big enough. That means that the hardware or the software of the controller is actually not perfectly functional and actually returning something bad. It might also be software related because no, actually, that's a different story. I had the same controller on different PCs, but that was because I had the different settings picked. Because I had the dead in the one setting to this value and the other to 0.00001, and the 0001 was way too small. So yeah, and because of this bug, I had in the sensitivity and the dead, I had huge differences in player experiences on the alpha for different players. Yeah, so that is the first thing I figured out, which cost me quite some time. The next thing I did is I did another iteration over the characters once more, as you can see here. And by the way, I'm playing only in small screen now because it's basically I'm once again on my work PC, and he's not really powerful for doing the recording and stuff. So this is now the player avatar. Maybe I can do it just, I will maximize it just for showing, but later I will minimize it again. So this is the player avatar of the easy character now. As you can see, it's lagging now, but I will not continue like this. Anyway, so you can see it here, I think. So what I basically figured, I can maybe pause this a second. What I figured is I got feedback from someone from YouTube who told me that the characters were not wispy enough, or didn't look really like wisps, besides the obvious wisp. And that was the point for me where I finally figured out what I had to do. And like this character, the heart, I think looks now a lot better and is more in line with the normal wisp. The same goes for the middle character. I actually like this one a lot. I think the thing that's drawing behind the trail looks actually kind of nice. I really like it for this one. The color obviously is not final. I can change the colors later. This is just a first. I don't even know if it's the basic color, but it's at least one color I will give the players. I will give to the players to be possible to choose from, but it will probably not be the default color for this character because it's too close to the other stuff like this. And then just for reference, this one you already know. And you can see now that it's way more in line than with the other characters. Before it was really much different. If you want to check it out, you can look at the past episodes. You can just go back into the list because I will add this to the list of my devlogs. Yeah, so I think that much is clear. So I changed that. It took me quite some time to figure out not only what I did wrong, basically, why people didn't like it, and me included, and also how I can do it in a correct way. Because I started off with trying to do it like this, but it was pretty hard for me. But once I figured out that I really needed to do it really similar to what I did before, I think I'm now at quite a good spot, and I also know how to do more characters now. Yeah, so another thing I did is I fixed a couple of pause bugs I had with starting pause too early, and also maybe I can show that quickly. If you died, now I will show it in small screen, but I will take this character. If you died and pressed pause, it was not really readable, especially if you took the blue character. Wait, maybe I should take the blue one for this. Oh, yes, so this one. And if you put it here, like, it's still not perfectly visible, but it's fine now. The problem before was there was no outline here, so it was really hard to read. I will, by the way, change also this explosion because I don't like it. The other ones go into white and this one doesn't, so that's why I don't like it as much. Anyway, so I fixed that. I fixed a couple of bugs when pausing at the beginning. I'm currently working on making it possible for me to switch between levels at the... No, that's not a good explanation. Like currently, if you look at here in the level complete canvas, level complete child to activate the next level, I will just write here the name of the level, which I want to have next. Which is fine if you already know for sure how your complete level progression is. The problem is though, if you want to put this, like let's say this was level 14 and the next one is level 15, and you had like 30 levels afterwards, and if you want to put one in between, you would either need to break up the numbering so that it's no longer correct, or you would need to shift them all one back. Which I think is fine, but I figured it would be better for me to have actually a global manager for this that basically had a list of all the levels and I can just choose which one comes after which. Then I can also give the levels more clear names. Like I could do that here as well, but like it's not easy for me to see also which level comes after which unless I am taking the correct numbering approach here. And with a manager where I have all the levels below each other, I think it's actually easier for me to see what's going on, and I can give the levels a more descriptive name, which should be good for me for the future because I currently had problems with the level progression. The entire level thing will change anyway. Yeah, so I don't know if I talked about this. If I did, I'm sorry. But what I also did is I fixed the first of all, I fixed that these... I don't think I talked about this already. I fixed that these level borders, they can now no longer go into the level, the stuff here. So there's basically a line here that they cannot cross anymore. Oh, you saw it here maybe. Maybe if I zoom in you will see it. Wait, I cannot zoom too far in. It's a little bit lagging, but it should be fine. It should be visible then. Like maybe if I can... This one maybe? Oh no, but here or here. Yeah. If you watch here a little bit closer, like it's pretty hard for me to show, but they will basically bounce off once they are in the at this line. Like it will actually start to bounce off exactly in the middle. I did not change that because the particles are currently only taking the middle point for collision for this. In my normal collision detection, it obviously takes the correct one, but for this, I figured it's enough and it's better for performance to do it just like this. Because then it will just say, if the middle point is over that, it will just basically bounce it backwards. And the same goes for all the directions. I will probably do this as well for all the obstacles, but I didn't do this now. Another problem I had with the level editor basically that I have here is that the level editor inside the Unity editor, which I basically did. Maybe, I don't know if you guys saw it already, but maybe I can show it off quickly. What I basically can do, let's delete this for people who didn't saw it yet. Delete, then destroy goals and destroy borders. So now basically I have a empty level, how it is in the beginning. And this tile is basically open to all 4 sides, and what I can say is I can choose here the tiles I want to instantiate, and here I will choose where the tile should be added to the left, to the top, to the bottom, or to the right. And so I can choose this here and instantiate this tile, then I have this, and then I can basically choose this tile and do it again, and so I can basically very quickly do my levels. Once I'm finished, I can say close all the open borders, which is somewhere, where is it? Here. Then all the borders are closed, and basically we are happy with this level right now. That's exactly what we had before, with a little bit different tiles, but in the end it's the same. You can then say spawn a goal, which will then create the goal for you, and then once we have everything in place, we will have basically the same level that we had before. So but what the problem that I had with that was that the instantiation did not really instantiate prefabs, but just game objects, so the prefab connection is lost. What that means, that's a little bit of technical stuff, but for Unity terms, what that means is if I am having a prefab, it basically has a connection back to the thing I have saved in the normal project. So if you look inside here, where is it, in resources? Prefabs always have to lie under resources. That's Unity specific, you don't really need to remember, but that's the thing. So I basically have here the tiles here, one by one. I have them all configured here, and if I change anything here, if a prefab connection is valid, the thing that I change here will also be changed in every level of the game where I have a prefab connection. So that makes changing stuff very easy. And it's a really great way to work. But what I did before is I just instantiated the game objects without the prefab connection, which meant if I changed something here, it will not change here. So, and that was a real problem for me because I changed what I just showed you, that the stuff is bouncing back. And so basically all the old levels are not valid anymore. The saving grace basically is that I wanted to redo the levels anyway, because I wanted to change the progression and also the which I will talk about later. So that's the saving grace for me, but obviously I started to fix this so that it will not happen in the future again. And also what is good is that with the level designer, as you saw, I can basically do most of these levels very easy because I can just create the level, drag the obstacles in, and I'm done. So it's not a very much work because I already have all the obstacles saved and everything, so I'm very well prepared for all this, but still it's quite some work. So with that out of the way, I think we can go into the topic this week, the game design topic, which is basically game progression, non-narrative game progression. So what is non-narrative game progression, or what do I mean by that? Basically, what I will disregard for this, for what I'm talking about, is any kind of story or character arc, which means, or immersion. Basically everything related to story or narrative game design I will disregard because that's not really important for my game, and it's not really what I'm it will make things a lot more complicated. What I will rather go into is basically I want to talk about skill-based games that try to get people into the zone. I don't know if you heard about the zone. The zone is a term that is, I don't know, coined by who, but basically a lot of people refer to it as if you have a very challenging or difficult task, and it is shortly before the frustration level. Basically, it's if you have something and you are able to do it, but it has to be difficult enough because you cannot get bored, but it cannot get too challenging. So basically, that's the state you want to achieve with a game like my game or also other games. So, but how is it done? And what are the problems? So, first of the problem is, like, as you can see here, I did the first level like this, almost like this. Like I had an explanation of how to go, and you just fly here. And I figured it's so easy that basically everyone can do it, yeah. But once I saw people actually playing, they actually had a hard time. What I did afterwards, the second level, if I'm opening the second level here, just for a second, just for reference. So the second level, don't save, I don't need to save this. It was like this. It will no longer be like this, but it was like this. Like the first thing you did is you just needed to fly from left to right. I hope this is not breaking now, because I have sometimes a little bit of bugs in Unity. If that's the case, I'm sorry. If it's the case, I will just explain it, and in the meanwhile, I will reboot it. I think it's already broken. So yeah. What I will actually so no, let me just quickly restart. So I'm not distracted. So the first level, you just needed to go to the right, I think, and fly into the goal. The second level, what it already did, it introduced a new mechanic, which I wrote, watch the orange tiles, which were tiles that were not only on the border, but were actually flying down from the top. The next... okay. I will try this once more. And also the level got a lot longer. What that did was I think I lost a lot of people already at that point. The problem was that it actually got too hard for a lot of people too quickly. But what I should have done is I should have basically let people really figure out how to... Wait, actually I can just show it like this. It's maybe easier and it will not break. So as you can see here, the first level was basically just fly from here to here and you are finished. No obstacles, no nothing. The next level that I already did is fly from here to here to here to here, and you have dynamic obstacles which are random, which makes it even harder. Like you cannot even learn the pattern. So I actually kind of overloaded the player. That's the first thing that breaks immersion. What I just said before is if the game gets too hard too quickly. So that's a really bad thing to do because I actually lost too many players. The other thing is if I would just let them do the same thing. Like let's say I would do 3 levels in a row that do exactly the same thing, or maybe just fly from right to left and then fly from up to down and then to up and whatever, and like just the same always, it probably would get too boring for a lot of players. So the difficulty in a game is because you have this unknown, which is the skill of the player, is how do you accomplish that the player gets into a float state when the player skill is varying that high. And there are actually a couple of ways to do that. Like I will go over some of them, and like I cannot do all of them in my game, but I still will go over them. So the first thing that you could do is a dynamic difficulty, which is actually I think a really nice way of getting into float state, but it was not perfect for my game. Like I would have needed to plan this earlier, and I didn't really think about it, so maybe I should have done it anyway. But so the idea behind the dynamic difficulty, which works really well for a game like this, is because first of all, it's just about completing the level, and if you have a dynamic difficulty, it only works basically for single player games, and single player games without high scores basically, and that's where actually my stuff falls flat, because I want to have high scores in the end, and I want it to be somewhat comparable. And if you have dynamic difficulty, you cannot really make it comparable, because the game will adjust to the player's skill, which is great for the experience of the player, but bad for a high score. So basically you need to decide if you want to have dynamic difficulty or high score. But let's say I would have done a dynamic difficulty for this game. How would I go about this? Like there are actually a couple of ways you can do it. First of all, you can even go as far as letting players skip levels. Let's say you let him fly from left to right, and he did it with one go. then you could say, well, okay, if he did it, like, these are just suggestions. This is not really like what I did, but these are stuff I actually thought about. So if he's getting it done very quickly, maybe you let him fly once again so that you just figure out if that was not luck. You let him now flicker to the top and then maybe one more to the bottom and to the right, which is actually a little bit different all the time, and it's not that boring, and it should be quick enough for him. So he doesn't get bored. That's the important point. So you have 3 levels, and he did it basically on the first go. What you could say then is he just skips the next 3 levels, because they will just repeat the same thing again, and that's already basically dynamic difficulty. Although it's not really difficulty what people would think about in the normal sense, it actually is a dynamic difficulty, because like the other player will get more time to get familiar with the mechanics, and I really think it's a really good way to do it. But the thing is, though, if you have fixed levels that people can go to, it would feel weird if you would see other players playing more levels than you. So how could you solve the problem? I also thought about this. And maybe I will actually do this, because I think I can get away with it even with the high score stuff. This is basically a dynamic difficulty that you can do without really destroying the high score, basically. So if you let players skip levels, they will just not have the high score in this level, and they can still go back and do them later on. And maybe you can notify them. And like I said, that's basically a solution I thought of myself that I could use. So what you can do is basically exactly what I said. You will notify the player that because of his skill, maybe even giving him a reward. And that part I haven't quite figured out yet. That he was so good that he can now skip levels. And if he wants to do that, he can still go back later to the other levels and play them. But if he wants to skip those levels, he can do it. Or maybe just let him skip the levels and just notify him that if he wants to play the other levels, he can go back. The good thing about the second thing I said is that he will probably just continue playing the game and will not get bored. Because if you give him the decisions, maybe he's not really aware how good he is, or he will just still, for completion's sake, want to do everything. If he wants to do stuff for completion's sake, he could still go back later. But for now, I think it would be better for him to jump ahead and get to the more interesting parts for him, because that's basically what we want. We don't want him to get bored. That's a really important thing. So and this way, it's also really good for the players who's not as good, because he gets more time. So basically, you would have a dynamic difficulty that works kind of with high score games, but it's not really what I think people would think of as a dynamic difficulty, but it actually is. So that's one thing. Another thing that I could do, and what I cannot do because I have high scores and I have decided for another way, is to actually change the levels themselves, first of all. Like what you can do is you could say that there are less tiles dropping down here. That's the first thing you could say. It's quite easy. Like every time you die, one less tile will drop down to a minimum of 3 or something like that. At which point it will get a lot easier than the beginning. The next thing you could say is you let these tiles drop slower. The next thing, there's so many things you can do to make the game easier, and just do it slowly. And the only thing you then need to figure out is, this is really the hard part, is where the frustration level of your player is. Because some players might like it if they die 20 times in a level. And for them, the frustration level is the 21st time they're dying. For other players, it might be the 5th time. And this is where things get really tricky. Because like how are you supposed to know when the difficulty is too hard for a player? And the same is with getting bored. Like, how are you supposed to know how fast a player gets bored? And all this stuff is really complicated, and it gets really fuzzy. Like, there are a couple of approaches you can take. You can basically start in the middle, and then basically, or maybe start at the more easy thing, because like most people will be more forgiving if they are a little bit bored at the beginning, and then that's what games normally do, is increase the difficulty up and up and up, and then at some point it will get too hard for him and they will get frustrated. And like the only thing that I figured out what you could do with dynamic difficulty is you could increase the difficulty to the point where the player actually quits playing. And like there are two reasons why he quit playing. Either because he didn't have time anymore, or it was too hard for him. And then maybe you drop back there, you drop the difficulty down again, and in the next game you will go up again and stop getting harder before you hit the same difficulty. Like all the stuff what I'm saying is very theoretical because it's also really hard to judge how difficult one level is if the levels vary really much. If they would play the same level over and over again, it's actually kind of easy. But how are you supposed to tell if a level is the same hard as another level and stuff? So, and that's where the dynamic difficulty I think falls flat for Twitch games like this, where the levels vary really hard. Like dynamic difficulty, I think works best if you have a game that is, if you can compare one game to the next, and you can basically do something like a rating, almost like chess. Like rating a chess player against the AI is actually kind of fine. You could maybe start with a 50-50 game, maybe get harder and harder and harder, and then at some point he maybe will drop off. But like in chess, like the repetition, the games are so long that it's also difficult. So maybe you ask the player how much he wants to win, and but it's like there is no real good solution I think for this. You really need to think about your game and also think about your audience. Maybe I think the best thing for you is to figure out what kind of audience you have and then look at the statistics, how likely they are to stop playing after a certain time. So basically I think that's the only way you can do it, like because your audience is at least a little bit to go on, or gives you a little bit to go on, gives you like some way to adjust. Like maybe you can say like, okay, my audience is fine dying 20 times in a level, because I know that, because if I look at the let's play videos or if I look at statistics, if you have some, I see that these people are really resistant to dying. So that would be a way. And I'm just rattling off stuff that comes to my mind. I don't really have a perfect solution for this. My solution is a little bit different. So, and that's also what a lot of other games do. And I will also go into the problems with that. So, what I will do is I will basically let the player decide how difficult he wants to have the game. And like, which is normally known as picking the difficulty at the beginning, easy, middle, hard. This is also a way, by the way, to have him pick that. You could also adjust your dynamic difficulty that I talked about before. But the problem with easy, middle, hard is that some players, basically you put off a little bit of a design decision to the player, and some players might pick the wrong difficulty for them. Some players would maybe be best served to play normal, but actually pick easy, because they don't want to be stressed. But like, it's like really tricky to say. Like, is it wrong if they don't want to be stressed to still stress them? But some people actually will break their game. Like it's the same with cheats. Like some people will cheat. Like I'm actually guilty of that myself. I will cheat some games and that will make the experience for me bad, and then I will quit playing the game. Like I did that with games I actually don't like that much, but still, like Sims and stuff. Like I didn't really get into the game. I really wanted to build stuff though. And so instead of trying to figure it out or maybe get through the game in an honest way, I just cheated and built stuff. And then once I built stuff, I got bored of the game and just quit. And like, is that a good solution? It probably isn't. By the way, cheats are also a way of giving players access to more easy ways. Like if it basically prevents roadblocks. So there are basically a lot of different things you can do to stop player from getting stuck or to make stuff easier. Like maybe you let him pick difficulties, and then if they still think it's too hard, the easy one, you give them cheats in addition. Like that's actually a valid way to do stuff. Like having cheats is the good thing about cheats is that people, it's not directly integrated into the game, so it's not just an option. They have to search a little bit for it, and because they searched for it, they actually really mean what they say. Like if you if you put in a cheat, basically you cannot die anymore. They know what they're getting into, and they actually searched actively for this, so they will be fine with that experience. They decided it for them, and if you would just pack it as very easy that they basically cannot die anymore, then they might still get bored with your game. So I think a good approach is to have some cheats in a game, so that people who really want to have it more easy than the easy difficulty can get that too. And I actually think I will do that for my game as well. But that's, once again, you get problems with high scores there. You need to see, like, maybe if you put cheats in, you cannot score high scores. Which is a good way to do stuff, because cheats actually allow you to do that. You could say, okay, by activating this cheat, you will not be able to get high scores. That's just the way it is. But what I did is a little bit different, and you already know that. So what I did is basically I'm giving the players different characters to play with, and I will give them more as the game progresses, which solves a lot of things for me. Like, first of all, it gives the game more variety, because different controls feel different, and that should be fun for the player to experience. Also, it solves a problem with difficulty, because you can make certain characters more difficult to control. You can even differentiate with the characters between the different high scores, which is fine if you let them pick the difficulty, which is not fine if you have dynamic difficulty, because the dynamic difficulty, there would be too many high scores basically to tell. And for me, there's even probably too many for a normal game, but because it's in the form of a character, I think it's fine. I'm still not sure if it is, but that's basically, I think, the main idea for my game. And yeah, so just to wrap things up, because I think we are basically done here. What do we have for player progression? First of all, you have to always figure out a way to introduce your player properly, give him enough time to play around with the mechanics. Don't make the mistakes that I did with falling down and stuff. You also need to understand. Now I need to think. You also need to think about what kind of audience you have, because like the audience will dictate how frustrating you can make the game, and that's actually a really important metric, I think. So it's a really important metric to know how frustrating you can make your game. Like, if you make a game like Farmville, there's almost zero frustration. If you make a game like mine, the frustration level just is naturally higher. That doesn't mean, though, that I cannot, that I don't want to cater to people who want to experience the game more. And that's where you need to strike a balance. Like, you cannot make the easy mode too easy, and because then, like, other people will say, what kind of bullshit is that? Like, people will pick the easy mode expecting something different, and that's where cheats come in. So you can basically hide difficulty modes with cheats. Basically, what I would do maybe is just enter cheats for different vehicles or characters, and these characters are maybe very easy to control. Maybe one will have another life, which will just spawn you right back. Maybe one will have infinite life, that if you die, you will just go a little bit back. Like, stuff like that is actually possible for me without really breaking the game, and that would also solve the problem for me of showing the cheats, because like, if that's basically a new character, people could even take this character and score high scores with them and compare their cheats to other cheat characters and stuff like that. So cheats, I think, are a really important thing, and I think, I'm not sure how much they are used right now anymore. I think it was a really good thing that they did in the past, and like, people will actually be able to find it out quite easily these days. Like, there's so much stuff in the internet, and it should be fine. And it's actually also a little bit of a throwback, so I think it will also help there. Yeah. So yeah. Then you can also do dynamic difficulty completely, that I said also before, which will just basically react to the player, and you will basically say what kind of you define how often the player should die, and you will try to match that. Like, you will basically say, like, how often should the the person fail. And maybe you will even adjust that value based on the player behavior, but that's a lot more difficult. I think it's the easiest way is to do dynamic difficulties, to say, I want my player to fail 60% of the time. That's the kind of thing I think that people will enjoy still before falling off. And like, not all, it will not work for all of the people, but I think that's the only way you really can do it. Like, you can only pick a percentage, you want the person to fail, and then adjust the difficulty to get him to that percentage. It's also, I think, important to not really tell people what you're doing in this case, because it's people will not like it as much. I think it will feel a little bit like cheating to them. So I think it's best if you do it in secret a little bit and do it really slowly only. And yeah, so the next thing is obviously that not every level should be the same. Like, the beginning levels should be easier than the end levels. Like, there's not only a progression, like, there's not only a percentage for one level, but it will change over the flow of a game. And like, what a lot of games also do is, like, which I should probably talk about when talking about progression, is that they will basically do in waves. Like, maybe I can draw this a little bit shortly. So I don't really mean waves, but yeah. So you will basically have a increasing difficulty like this probably. And then after this point is reached, they will drop it off and reward the player. That's actually what a lot of games do. Like, so yeah, that's actually a nice one. So at the top here, once this is reached, you will give out a reward and drop the difficulty. The reward can be different things. Like, in narrative games, often it's just a cutscene. In my game, maybe it's a new character, maybe it's a new kind of level design. Like, all that stuff is basically a reward to the player because it feels different. He can basically hear what happens here is he will basically start to what is it called? Experience new stuff. Like, I will write this. Experience new stuff. I think you know what I mean. Like, play around with new mechanics. Like, get him to test stuff out. Maybe that's not even enough. Like, probably it should be more like dropping down to here and then going to there. Something like that. It's just to give you an idea. So the difficulty should drop down a lot again, so that the player can play around with the new stuff, and get to learn new stuff. Like, usually also new mechanics are introduced afterwards. So you basically introduce a mechanic, then you rank the difficulty in the mechanic up, and then once he reached a certain point, you will reward the player for mastering the mechanic and then drop it down again. Like, that's one way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it, but that's a pretty good one. And also, oh, I didn't want to open this. What's also then important for that's also part of player progression, is at the beginning you have to reward the player more often than later. So this is actually known as, I forgot the name of the theory, but the idea is that the longer at the beginning you want to reward the player often, like, say, every 5 times he plays for the first 3 times. Like, that's just some numbers, whatever. For the first 3 times or 15 times. Let's put it like this. 3 times is a little bit misleading. So basically every 5 times for the first 15 times, so in 5, in the 10th time and the 15th time he plays or he tries something or succeeds in something or something else, you will reward him. It's probably, the reality is probably a lot lower. Like, at the beginning you basically reward at every point. Like you see that in a lot of games. Like, they will reward you for completing the tutorial. They will reward you for clicking the correct button. It almost gets ridiculous at the beginning. And then they will increase the range of when they reward the player. The thing is, though, if you also need to take a look at your audience, because I think my audience would actually dislike being rewarded for not doing anything good. Like, that's not really what they want. So I think it's not good for just rewarding them for flying from left to right. I think it needs to be a little bit more than that. Maybe if they figured out how to fly around, I can reward them, which is fine. It's not still not the best. They will say, yeah, whatever, it's fine. I finished the first 5 levels. I can get a small reward for this. That's fine. And then later, but the idea is that if it is better, or it's not better, but it's the same if you increase the length, or it's even better. I'm not sure. But basically, the idea is it's a good design is to increase the range. But I think I talked about this last time already, which is the same with basically RPG level progression and stuff. They do it exactly the same thing. At the beginning, you get level up quickly, and then later you do it more slowly. So I think that will do it for this week. I think I have talked about everything regarding game progression I wanted to talk about. As I said before, this is not really accounting for anything with player narrative, any character arcs and stuff. Like all that stuff is completely out of the way for what I talked about here. It's basically for skill-based games that are not really focused on the narrative. So it might also apply to multiplayer games if you have a matchmaking algorithm, which is, by the way, also just a dynamic difficulty. Like a matchmaking algorithm is exactly the same as dynamic difficulty. People that don't have problems with that, but I think they would have problems with dynamic difficulty in single-player games, which is another very interesting topic, but not one I'm here to talk about today. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked what you saw about the game, just a little bit you saw, but if you liked it, maybe give it a try and go to www.parttimeindie.com. We'll glow the Wisp, and there you can find links from there. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is @KeyboardSamurai, and Samurai is written with a Y in the end. You can also follow me on Facebook, or like my game on Facebook, which is Will Glow the Wisp on Facebook. Maybe you will check out our Reddit community. However you want to get in contact, I would be really happy if you can just give me feedback. It is really invaluable. No, invaluable, is that the correct word? I think it's really good for me, basically. That's what I want to say. So give me feedback. Thanks again for listening, and bye.